I'm Mary Lyons, and I am the Wealth Woman.
And I'm Eric Alexander from Benchmark Income Group.
And this is the Big Wealth Podcast.
Everything you've ever been taught about money is wrong.
But don't worry, we're here to help.
On this podcast, we'll use the same tools you already know to actually help set you free.
Free to do what you want with your time, with your money, and with your energy. Free to live your life the way you have dreamt about.
So we're going to talk about wealth knowledge, personal reflections, and the financial industry news of the day.
Welcome to the Big Wealth Podcast.
So I wanted to start out today, and I'm so excited to get to introduce the world to Mary Lyons, my friend and mentor and business colleague and the whole deal. And I'm so excited we get to sort of have this conversation today because it's, I just think the world of Mary. We've been working together for, good grief,
forever.
Forever.
Don't say that; it makes me feel old.
We've been working together for a long time, and I get to kind of see the inside of Mary, and see her heart and sort of her soul, and watch her over the last, as we've been siblings, what it feels like siblings for the last 12 years of kind of walking through that process, and it has been nothing short of just kind of a cool journey with her. And so I get to interview Mary today, which is,
I think you might be overselling it.
No, it's not, right? We there's an old joke that you don't quit jobs, you quit bosses, right? And I think that's part of it, right? We don't quit jobs. We quit because we don't like the people that we're around. If we're around cool people, we can survive pretty much anything because we're with people that we love. So I'm actually going to kind of jump in because I know enough of Mary's background to be dangerous, but I don't know enough to be like useful, is maybe that's the point of it. So,
well, and I'm just going to tell you, I'm going to struggle, right? Because I have to relinquish all control. I'm not in charge of the questions.
I know. It's like the first time ever.
Panic.
I feel very Machiavellian right now, right?
Oh no.
So, so tell me how you got from, because you moved around a lot as a kid, if I remember right. So how did you get from kind of that process to where you are now? What was that sort of matriculation?
Yeah, so I did move around a lot as a kid. I went to 10 schools from kindergarten to college. And when I tell people that, they always ask if I was a military brat. And I'm like, the brat part's probably right, but the military is not. Right. My dad was an entrepreneur, and he's also a financial advisor. And so, he was either starting a company and we moved so he could launch that, or, even within being a financial advisor, because he owned his own firm, he would get an office up and running. And then frequently we would move to another city so he could get that up and running. And so there was a lot of moving, and sometimes at least it was back and forth between the same towns. So I would see people that I knew from previous years, but sometimes it was brand new places. And, I think it really had a profound impact on my life because I think my natural inclination is to be pretty introverted. And when you move around that much, you are forced to become an extrovert just to survive. And so it really taught me some skills about my ability to get to know people and to build relationships quickly. But I will say it probably had some adverse impacts too, because it wasn't until I was dating my husband that I began to realize that if you want a long-term relationship with somebody, you have to actually work through any of the issues. You can't just be like, well, I won't know you in 6 months.
Because I'm moving, right?
Right, exactly. So, I think it helped me come out of my shell just because I had to, and it pushed me to be more than I was. But, when I look at kind of the direction I thought I would go and where I am now, there's definitely a disconnect. And initially I wanted to be an English major when I was looking at college degrees. I had been the editor of our literary magazine, and I just thought for sure I wanted to be an English teacher, probably at the collegiate level, but that going into something in publishing would be interesting because I could just get paid to read books all the time. And that seemed like amazing. But my dad said he wouldn't pay for that because he didn't think I'd be able to get a job when I graduated. And so I picked the closest thing, which was journalism. And I hated it because one of the things they teach you in journalism school is that you're supposed to write objectively. Not everything is an editorial. and I have a hard time concealing my opinions. So I frequently would have notes back from my teachers that said, "We're not interested in your opinions, we're interested in the facts." And that just, to me, just regurgitating facts was not that challenging, and it was hard for
Right.
me to stay engaged. And so I graduated from college with 2 degrees. I went to the University of Texas. My degrees are in journalism and also in a program called Plan 2, which is an honors liberal arts program. That is, the way they market it is it's a Ivy League education at a public education price. Now, whether that's true or not, I have no idea, because I didn't go to an Ivy League school, but that's what
But
they
it's
said.
good marketing, right?
Yeah, right. And so I graduated and I had no idea what I wanted to do. And I've been a very driven person for most of my life. And I hit this weird spot where I just couldn't make decisions because I was terrified that I would make the wrong decision and it would alter the course of my life in a way that I'd never be able to get it back on track. And so at the end of the summer, after I graduated, probably a week or two before my birthday, my parents sat me down and said, "You can stay here till your birthday, but the day after this, we're kicking you out of the house. So you better have a job and a place to live." And I was fortunate enough to be offered a job in that time frame. And then I moved into an apartment that my dad and his business partner had been renting because they didn't need it anymore. So I managed just barely to do that. But I went into the mortgage industry because that's where the job was and I needed the job. And I did that for 3 years. And what was cool about it is it was eat what you kill. So I had to figure out how to build a network and get clients. But it also gave me insight into people's finances. And so I got to see what was really happening to people. I knew their credit scores. I knew what their income looked like. They told me what conversations they were having with their financial advisors. And I'm nosy, so I probably, was digging for a lot of that information. But at the end of 3 years of doing that, I began to feel a moral obligation to get into the world of financial advice. And I called my dad and said, "Hey, I want to come work with you. Can I come do this for a living?" And my first year, when I transitioned and I was getting my licenses, I was the recruiter for his firm. And then by the end of a year of doing that, I went to him and I said, "Look, I appreciate this, but this is not what I wanted to be doing. I want to be talking to clients." And so I made the jump into financial advice at that time period and have been doing it ever since.
But so you're a rock star. For those that don't know, you've been top 3 in the nation, top 2 or 3 for the last, I don't know, 40 years. It feels like I feel like you're the perennial up there at the top, right? But you've been up there at top 1, 2, 3, 4, kind of that range nationally for a long time. And so every time someone new meets you, or every time a new advisor comes in, they're just like, "Oh, Mary, well, she's just, gold nuggets fall out of her mouth as she walks around and clients just flock to her," right? But I was there on the other end of your career, and it wasn't always like gold nuggets raining out of your mouth, right? There was some rougher moments, right?
Yeah. And yeah, that's true. I think about the time that you started with our firm was maybe my second year in the business. And I had started in Austin, and because I had built my network, I knew a lot of people. Clients were asking me to do their financial plans because they already knew me and trusted me from the mortgage process. But I got married, and I could tell immediately that my husband was not happy at his job. And I think I knew that before we got married, but I didn't know how unhappy he was until we started living together, because there was no buffer when he came home. So I was there for the career detox for the day. And I knew pretty quickly, he wasn't going to stay there. And so he applied to law school and got in at SMU here in Dallas. And so I had told him when we got married, "Listen, I'm going to live in Austin for the rest of my life. I moved around a lot as a kid. This is the first time I've ever had roots." And within the first year of marriage, he's like, "Hey, we need to move to Dallas." And as the new wife, I just remember thinking to myself, and this might have been in conversation with my mother as well, like, it's probably not a good idea if you crush your spouse's dreams for a better life in the first year of marriage. So I said, this is your one free out. I will move to Dallas, but you will never make me move again. So just know that. So we
You have to
moved
wait to
Dallas.
crush their dreams until you're 4.
Right.
That's
So,
the rule.
it's established at that point.
Right.
It's fine. So, so we moved to Dallas, and I didn't know anyone here. Well, that's not true. I had 2 friends that I had known in Austin that had moved here, and neither one of them were interested in what I was going to do for a career. And
Right.
so it was so difficult because, I think I was probably 25 or 26, and I looked a lot younger. And so to be young and female in a male-driven industry and trying to tell people much older than me what to do with their money when they had no context for who I was or my place in the community was rough.
Right.
And so I think my second year in the business, I made less than Mike's tuition for law school. And it was only because I had saved so much money prior to moving here that we made it through the year at all. And, I will also say that the only reason I still had a job at the end of that year is because my dad was my boss. And I think he didn't think it would be good for family relations if he fired me. And so it was a struggle. And I think that's, when people see success, they assume there has always been success,
Right.
and they don't see the difficulties of the journey in order to get there. And I was very fortunate in that year. I met a gentleman named Dennis Wagner, who was a business coach, and he told me I needed to hire him and that he would only charge me $500 a month. And I came back to him and I said, I can't even afford that.
Right.
That's too much money. And he said, look, I'll coach you for free for the first month. And then if you see value, you can engage. And Khalid, that generosity, oh my gosh, it made such a big difference. By the end of that month, I had learned so much from him and continued to learn from him over the course of the next several years. And he really helped me understand how to run a business. And that was tremendous. But the next year I did much better. And then by the third year, I think I broke into the top 10 advisors with One America. Right. And that in and of itself was so fascinating because on the very first, they do a trip for people who are at that level. That's kind of like a international study group. So you get to know your peers who are at that level and what they're doing and get to know them. And it was a really neat trip. We went to Argentina. I was pregnant with my first kid at the time. And I just remember being so excited. And we were in the airport going through customs, and I noticed the person in front of me had a One America shirt on it, and they had mailed out this book that had pictures of everybody and their spouse with a little bit of information about them. So I even knew who it was, and so I'm total fangirl because I've been looking at these advisors and talking to them and following their career trajectories, and I'm like, hey, oh my gosh, congratulations! I'm so excited about your success, and I'm happy to be here for the first time. And I just remember he turned to my husband and he congratulated my husband. And I remember his exact words. He said, hey man, congratulations on qualifying in the top 10. To do that at such a young age is so impressive. And I'm not a good poker player. Whatever's happening is showing on my face. And I can't imagine what my face must have looked like at that moment. But I remember my husband looked at me and he made eye contact and he said, I'm not the badass. She is. I'm just the arm candy. And I in that moment, I was like, oh, I have selected my spouse in such a good way.
That's right. You married well.
Yeah. His ego didn't need that recognition. Right. And and I can't, the gentleman who had congratulated him was so embarrassed. And he and I have become really good friends since then. But it's fascinating because we see the success, we don't see the journey. And I can say that even now, frequently, there are not a lot of women in the top of our industry. Right. And I think it's important to me to sort of be that role model, because if you can see it, you can be it. But I think it's really hard to see it. And for me, it just never, that gender dynamic never entered into my mind. Like I was just like, well, if they can do it, I can do it. Like, even if it's really difficult and I have to grit it out and it's hard every day. But I do think it's so important in the long run too, to kind of be that role model.
And do you think that's what's driving you to some extent for the day to day, is sort of showing up to be that role model? I mean, how much of that do you feel like is that impact? Because I remember watching 2020 sucked for all of us. Like it was just a crazy year. I don't know if anybody else has sort of taken a nap for the last 13 or 14 months now, but like 2020 was just really rough. And there were moments where I'm like just checking out, like mentally, emotionally, I'm just done. Like I don't want to be at home anymore. I love my children, but they've got to go find jobs because I'm tired of dealing with them. Right. And your leadership through that process was nothing short of amazing, because you kept saying, and I don't think it was a specific phrase, but you kept checking in. How are you doing? Something's wrong with you. Stop being a moron. With it, I think may have been the actual phrase.
I didn't use quite those words.
but it was all in love, right? But it was sort of like, come with me. Like we can do this together. We can get through this together. And I remember watching myself go through that process and the team, and it was, I think the role model part of that was so cool to see from you.
Well, I think the best leaders lead by example. In my experience, the only people I want to follow are people who are doing a better job at something than I am. Right? I mean, if I'm doing a better job than them, why do I need to follow them? I can just do it myself. But when I find people who are really excelling in one particular area, I want to learn from them, right? I want to grow and figure that out. And so, I think there is kind of this fine line between being something that you're not, like trying to show up and be something that you're not.
Right. Fake it till you make it, almost.
Yeah, like I don't really love that as a phrase. But I think there's also something that says like, yeah, this is hard for all of us, but we still have to take care of our clients and make decisions and give what we can give. And so honestly, I just did my best to do that. And there were days last year, I mean, I can remember one in particular where I just went into the garage and had a good cry. And my husband came out into the garage and he said, "Are you okay?" And I was like, "No." And he said, "What do you need from me?" And I just remember looking at him and saying, "If I knew that, I wouldn't be out here." And he goes, "Okay, well, I'm going to make you a sandwich," and went inside and made me a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. And that was kind of his solution. And, but I was hungry. And that was part of my like mood, is that I was probably hangry at that point. And so, he was like, "Here's what I can give you right now." And I think that, even through the hard times, it's so easy to get focused on like, this is hard, this is hurting, this is whatever it is. But that idea of giving back, I think, is so important. And I also remember a day through all of that where we were having a team meeting and I like halfway through a sentence was like, "This sucks, I'm sorry," and just started crying. And in my head, I was like,
that
"Oh
day.
my God, what are you doing? What are you doing? Like no. Like you're supposed to be inspiring them to like be better." And I burst into tears. And I just remember Megan, I think it was, or she said to me, I think it was her. She said, "It's so good to see this, like to know that you're really feeling this way too. Because if you're feeling this and you can still do what you're doing, then it means I can too." Right. And I just was like, "Oh, okay." Because,
it feels like weakness in the moment, but I remember that day. I remember that day very, 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 very clearly. And it was like, there was a moment, it was like, holy crap, she's human. She's not a robot machine leader. She's real.
So vulnerable. It's ridiculous. I mean, I don't like vulnerability. It's very uncomfortable, but I think it's so important because without vulnerability, you're not authentic. Right. I mean, that's the human part. And I know I'm going on a total tangent, but
this is what I was hoping for.
There was a time when I was in my 20s, when I was in mortgage, and I put together this group of women. And oh my gosh, it was such an amazing group of women. We were all kind of in the same place. We were within like 5 to 10 years of each other. And a lot of, I think all of us were entrepreneurs of some sort or another. And we had agreed to read this book. And we were going to get together for coffee to talk about this book. And I would say that probably everyone who was in this group was further ahead of me in their career trajectory than I was. So I kind of felt like I had a lot to prove here. And I was the one organizing it. And so I show up and I'm trying to lead this whole conversation. And we're talking about the book. And at some point, they're like, "Well, the only reason I read it is because I knew you would show up and like you would have read it." and they were all kind of gabbing and talking to one another. And I had this sort of out of body experience, as weird as it is to say. It was like watching all these ladies bond with one another and become like closer, and just like, it was almost like I could physically see that they were becoming a community and I was outside of it.
Right.
And I was looking at it, and here's, everybody's going to think I just cry all the time, right, after these stories, but I just started crying. And because I felt so outside and apart from the group. And it took a minute for them, because, everyone's having their conversation. At some point, like, I probably was sobbing loudly by this point. They all turn and look at me. And it's like that part in a movie where everyone just kind of like slow turns and then it goes silent and they're just staring. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm sorry. Like, it's not appropriate for what I'm doing. And they were like, what's wrong? What happened? And I explained, I was like, I can tell that you guys are all bonding and I'm out here and I don't feel relatable. And one of the ladies, and I still keep in touch with her, she's a good friend of mine. She said to me, it's hard to be relatable when you're trying to be perfect. Like, perfect is not relatable. And I was like, what are you talking about? I'm the furthest from perfect, whatever. And they started listening, like, we all read this because we know you would. Like, we're all like trying to be better because you're trying to be better. And they were like, that's why we love you. But like, it's okay if you're not perfect all the time, because how else can we relate? Like, it's the human, authentic, vulnerable part of us, which makes us approachable. And it radically changed the way I thought about how I interacted. Because I just thought, if I'm perfect, people will love me. If I'm better at something than everyone else, people will admire me. And what I really came to realize is that when you're always focused on that, you just make people feel bad about themselves. Right? Because they're like, I don't.
You're a giant mirror that looks like,
yeah,
man, there's no way I can compete. Right. I'm out.
Yeah. And not that I was killing it, right? Like, I was failing at so many things, but I was trying to put off this perception of like, look, I'm perfect. And that's so off-putting. Like, I know people like that and I'm like, oh. And when I think that that's how I used to come off, I'm like, oh, that's not good. That's not good. But I think now what I've realized is that sort of authentic vulnerability with the encouragement to be more than you feel like you are in that moment, like to take the steps, even if it means you're like the snail, right? Who's like moving so slowly, but even the snail gets to look back and be like, look how far I came at some point. So, I think that vulnerability is just so key. And that's kind of what I guess tried to do through COVID. And certainly I had plenty of times where I just kind of fell apart and lost it. But I think that the thing that was so important was to pick myself back up and to take the next steps, because, when I'm being real honest about it, there's a lot of people that had it a lot harder than I did.
No doubt.
When you focus on yourself, life just isn't as good as when you focus on how you can make other people's lives better. And so, part of that focus on other people in some ways is probably a survival mechanism for myself, because if I'm focused on other people, I have a lot more joy in my life than when I'm focused on myself.
Yeah. Well, there's no time left over to wallow in where you are, right? If you're focused on the others. And I know I have a few more questions, but I'm trying to make sure we stay on time. So, we kind of talked a little bit about sort of your beginning in the career and how hard it was, but you've been doing this for a long time, almost 15 years, if I remember the math. So what do you find is sort of the hardest part of the job? I'm going to stay in the hard part for just a second, but like, what's the toughest, hardest part of this gig?
Yeah. That's a really good question. I think I'm like stumbling over it to some degree, because I think there are so many parts of this job that are hard. And that if they weren't, I wouldn't stay engaged.
Right.
I think the thing that is hardest for me is finding ways to show people how our work is different than what they may have been exposed to before. Because everybody has preconceived notions about how things are supposed to be done. They have preconceived notions about products and tools. And, as adults, we get to a point where we feel like we've kind of solved some problems. And even when people, so I'm going to rephrase that a little bit. People make decisions about their finances and then they put it aside. So when they've made decisions and they've hired an advisor and they feel like, okay, I took care of that, they don't want to talk about it anymore, right? Like,
check the box,
my list, it's done. I don't have to think about it anymore. And I think because of that, there are a lot of people who are settling for a lot less than they could actually have. And I don't mean that in terms of like, we're going to outperform this other portfolio, but I
Right.
mean that in terms of like, they're settling for investment management as opposed to strategy, right? They're
Right.
not getting, here's how you need to use all these different pieces together so that you can retire earlier, right? They're not getting the focus on income because someone's focused on building net worth. There's those small differentiators and getting people to engage back into that conversation so they aren't settling for something that's okay or fine, right? That they're actually
Right.
getting something that's great. And that to me is the constant struggle, because it's not like I can walk in and be like, hey, your baby's ugly, you need a new baby, right? I mean, that's so off-putting. And so
It's my favorite phrase. It's my favorite term.
yeah. But you can't, I mean, to me, it's about, I think what's really hard is finding ways, because everybody processes information differently, to help people self-discover
Right.
they can have something more, whether that's an emotional discovery or a technical discovery. I think that's hard
Yeah.
because,
Helping them see that vision, right?
yeah, I mean, I think that's probably the hardest part.
Yeah. And is there a least favorite part? No, I think the hardest is sort of like, it's a challenge, but it's something you're engaged in. And then there's some parts of the job that it's just like, I love everything about it. It's sunshine and roses all the time, except if I could just get rid of this thing.
Yeah,
right.
so I'm going to answer this question the same way that you do. It's paperwork.
Yeah.
Like,
Gosh.
I just, that doesn't, it's not engaging for me. I think it needs to be done. I mean, if you look at the paperwork that I do, it is perfect because I only want to do it once and I don't want to have to go back and redo it or correct anything.
Right.
But it's not because I enjoy doing paperwork. It's just that I really don't want to do it I didn't want to do it the first time. I really don't want to do it the second time.
Right.
I think that's probably it. And then, that's probably the only part. And then I think sometimes what else is hard for me, honestly, is, if there have been a couple of times where we've had a staff member who's underperforming. And what's difficult for me, because I tend to look at each person as an individual and see their potential, is to make sure that I am putting the needs of the team before the needs
Right.
of any one individual. And I find, it is least favorite, hardest, that for me is just remembering, like, the sign of a good leader is that they put the team and the outcome of the organization as a whole above any one individual. And I do struggle with that. That is definitely, that's a challenge for me.
The mission versus the man kind of thing.
Right.
So what's your, I guess, the favorite part, or the part that gives you the most joy? Where does that live for you? Is there something about the career that's like, man, I get to walk in every day and do this.
Right? I can answer that really quickly. I think for me, the most exciting part of this job on an ongoing basis is that I know that someone's life is better because I'm in it. At a professional capacity, I know that they're going to have a better life because of the conversations that we're having with them and the way we're structuring the plans. And, to me, that makes it really easy to get up and talk to people every day. And I feel like, one of the things that's really helpful for me is that I feel like with pretty much all of my clients that I have this space of gratitude, and there's gratitude from me to them for the opportunity and for the fact that they're inviting me into their lives, and, that they are sticking with me and that they see value in the work that I do. And then, there's gratitude from them for the impact. And so it's like living, and I'm not going to say that every day is gratitude all day long, because, you got to deal with different things that come up and that sort of thing. But that space of mutual appreciation, golly, that's such a cool place to live in, because there's a, hey, I'm so excited to see you, and here's what we're doing, and here's where we're going to go, and we're on this journey together, and the journey is exciting. And when the journey's hard, we're like propping each other up and holding each other's hands, and like we know there's a destination, and that the destination is going to be fun and exciting. And that, even through like the human and the vulnerable parts of that, I just love that. I mean, that's what gets me out of bed every day, right? And it's the same with our advisors. When I can like help them on their journey to become a better advisor and to change their own lives with the work that they're doing, like that gets me out of bed every morning. Even when I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, I'm tired, I didn't sleep well last night. The dogs were shaking their collar because they needed to get into a different, whatever it is. In the morning, I'm like,
Right.
oh, morning. And then I'm like, but wait, guess what I get to do today? And that's so cool to have a life like that. And knowing that I get to
Yeah.
help our clients move in that direction too is just, it's fun. It's fun.
Well, and your Enneagram is 8, if I remember right.
Oh
You're
yeah, that anger Enneagram, which I'm like, really?
No, but I think, and if I remember right on your strengths finder, we'll go through the top 5 in a second, but I think one of them is significance.
Oh yeah,
And
it's
and
in
it
my top 10.
is it top 10? It
Yeah.
is the one that I marvel at the most. And I'm like, oh, if I could only grab that strength and pull it in. But I think that to me, your superpower is just sort of significance matched up with your 8. Because I think the 8 sort of makes you a driver, and we're gonna go get it done. And baby, if there's a hill, we're gonna take the hill and kill everybody on it, kind of thing. Like you're gonna charge and take it. But we're gonna love
and then get them on board. Like
we're gonna love everyone on the hill.
That's right.
But it's like taking the hill, got to go get it done. But then also we're not just taking the hill because it exists. We're taking the hill because if we take it, then the whole world will be better. Like, and it's sort of this really cool, like watching you through the years, right? This really cool marriage of like, look at the impact we can have. And if we could only do that impact times 12,000, we could change the whole world. And it's not, it's what was the stupid joke, right? Like, I know I'm supposed to say these things, but it's like, no, but you really do believe it. Like there's sometimes where we're like, no, I can't do this anymore. You're like, but we could save their lives. We could save all of their lives. They're like, okay, fine. Like, but that's what sort of keeps us all moving forward, right?
Well, I think that connection to the impact is so important. And, significance is, I think, in some ways a dangerous trait. Because when there's this concept of the balcony and the basement, and significance when you're in the balcony and you're the best version of significance really is about the impacts that you're having on other people and needing to make a difference in the world. And, that's where it is when you're healthy. When you're in the basement, though, it comes off as, look at me, I'm important. And then sometimes it comes off as attaching significance to things that you shouldn't, right? Like making a small problem bigger because everything is significant, right? And so all of it has a meaning. And it's like, no, actually that just kind of happened. That's not impactful. And so, I feel like I have to pay a lot of attention to that trait in general. And that's part of the reason that it's so important to me to teach and to be reminded of the impact on a day-to-day basis. And when I find that I'm struggling with my motivation, I go back to the impact that I'm having on other people. So, I do a gratitude list, which is all about my thankfulness for what I have in my life. But then I also do an impact list of who have I impacted today and how have I impacted them? Because you get a choice with every interaction. Are you making someone's life better or are you making someone's life worse? And there's no middle ground there. It's one of those two.
Right.
And so when I think about that, I just try and frame it from the standpoint of how can I make this person's life better in every conversation that I have. And honestly, sometimes that means you have to have really difficult conversations.
Right.
Right. And then they have to choose what they do with that. But I do think it
But I think the significance part of that is when you have those conversations, because I've been on the receiving end of those, right? You and we've known each other for 12 years and are basically brother and sister at this point.
I've been on the receiving end of that too. Like,
no doubt, right? But we've both had that, and I think the part that softens it, the part that makes it easy to hear on the other end of it is it's sort of what's Ephesians, sort of truth and love, right? Like I'm going to tell you the truth, but I'm going to tell you the truth because I want you to be better and because I can see your potential and where you're going to go. And so I think whether it's an employee or business partners or clients or family and friends, it's like there's that focus on that part that I'm going to do this because if we get it right, what could come out on the other end is so much better.
Yeah, there's no ulterior motive, right?
Right.
I mean, it's a true belief that you are having a conversation because it will help the outcome, right? And I think
and that courage to do it, right?
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, I know we're coming up on time, and I want to sit and chat with you for like another 4 hours. I honestly, because there's so many other questions.
Well, that's one of my favorite parts of this job, right? In between client meetings, when we're like sitting across from each other, working on all the data, and we're having these like, I don't know, profound conversations about life where we're both like, oh, that's genius.
The state of the universe, right?
really? What are y'all talking about?
Right. So one last question, and then we'll get to the ending. But so if you could implant one idea, one vision, one sort of concept into your client's head, sometimes we can't fast forward their learning and their growth, but if you could sort of implant it, what would it be?
Oh, let's see if I can actually word this the right way. So this is something that that somebody, one of our advisors said to me, and they said, "You always show me that I can be more without ever making me feel like less." And I I think that idea of accepting yourself where you are and
Right.
seeing your strengths and your weaknesses and loving yourself anyways, but still giving yourself something to work towards with a sense of aspiration. I think that that's probably it. Like I'm sitting here thinking, like, should I give a financial answer? Because there's some good ones there. But I think at a very human level, the idea, like, give yourself grace to be who
Right.
you are, and then find ways to live up to your potential. Right. So when we're all human, so we're not going to be perfect. Give
Right.
yourself grace when you're not the version of yourself you want to be, but constantly find ways to improve and work towards that better version of yourself that you wish you could be, right? Like, I think
Right.
one of the things that's so beautiful, and I'm going to go a little bit spiritual here for a second, is that, like, God loves me for who I am, and he knows who I can be, right? And
Right.
so why shouldn't I do the same thing? Like, love myself for who I am and where I am, and give myself grace and space to be human, but aspire to be something better than where I
Right.
am right now. And that, I don't know, if I could like take that, because I feel like I've learned that over the past couple of years and I'm still learning it, but I feel like I've made tremendous progress. I think I would do that sort of cold logic honesty with oneself about where you actually are,
Right.
but done in a very loving and encouraging way, right? I mean, we can't get better
Right.
if we're honest about what our failings are. But I think it's so easy when you find a failing to obsess about it or to focus only on that and not see the good. Whereas if you focus on the good, you get more of it, but you still have to acknowledge what needs to change in order to be better. I don't
Right.
know. I'm not sure that was as articulate as I wanted it to be, but
No, I think that was brilliant. Actually, it's this for me. It's the Stockdale paradox. Is sort of the summation of what you're talking about. This idea that I must have faith that I'm going to win in the end, but at the same time confront the brutal realities of where I am right
where I am.
now.
Right.
Right. But know that there's a path. Right. And I just got to stay on the path.
Yeah, I mean,
Um,
maybe I should have quoted, Dory from the kids movie Finding Nemo, right? Just keep swimming, just keep swimming. I mean, I feel like that's really exactly what we're talking about right here. And you could tell I'm a mom by that last reference, but
right.
I can't tell you how many times that song plays in my head throughout the day. Just keep swimming, and it's
Right.
the same as that idea of the snail. Just keep making your progress at whatever pace you can, and don't give up. But be honest, like some days I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna be a snail today. That's fine. Like,
Right.
I
Well,
don't always
the brilliance of Dory in that movie was she had a really crappy memory.
right.
Right. It's like, I'm just going to keep swimming and I forgot all the crappy stuff I used to do. I'm just going to keep moving forward. Right.
Right.
This sort of graceful ignorance or graceful memory loss. That was probably a good thing. That's why women have babies and men don't, because who would go through that twice? But then women are like, oh, it wasn't that bad. It's like,
We
really? I
forget.
was there. It looked pretty horrible.
We forget, I think. I mean, intellectually you still know how bad it was, but emotionally, like, I don't know, that's biology for you. You gotta have that baby. Like,
That's, oh my gosh. So how can they, I know we're up on time and we're, criminally late on this one, but how can people find you if they want to come see more?
yeah, so I am on Facebook and Instagram, and my handle is at the Wealth Woman. I have my own website, which is wealthwoman.com. And then I am also on LinkedIn, and I am happy to connect with anyone who wants to, or if they have questions, they can always do InMail there. And then my email address is Mary at wealthwoman.com. Not wealthwoman. Let me say that again. It's Mary at wealthwoman.com.
And you can find me on Instagram and Facebook as well at Economics with Eric. I'm just trying to remember the stupid
I don't
name.
know why we can't remember our handles today.
It's been a long day. If I could remember my actual name, it would be a blessing, right? I think that's it. We'll leave you guys alone, and thank you for joining us on the Big Wealth Podcast. Thanks so much, Mary.
Have a great day.
All right, bye.